All right. So for those who may have seen the video that I sent out, a lot of the price areas that were predetermined to look for entries have been reached. And we could take a look. We definitely have some developments already. Wow. All right. So let me just check the news here. Frank, what's up? It's a light news day. Or at least there's no... Well, the high impact news for the pound is later. Let me just bring it up. It's not going to be when it usually is. Yeah, in 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours from now is the high impact news for the pound. Annual budget release. It's nothing crazy. And the usual time, U.S. session, CPI, regular stuff. Looks like pretty much average amount of news, but nothing to worry about in the next few hours. All right, to the charts. So I'll go through my analysis, and then any questions I'll answer. So with the non-farm news Friday, we have sort of a break in the correlation that was going on with the U.S. dollar driving the moves and the UJ. There, last week we had basically uptrends all around, right? But definitely lost the correlation since. Here's the news for the euro, and we have different storylines here, so we'll go each one. I mean, there are still similarities, but there are definitely more differences. Starting from the euro dollar, and just to beginning of the week, take a look from the larger time frames, get perspective again. Do the analysis from the top. Daily chart, if we look at the euro dollar, there's no trend. We're actually kind of in the middle of the range we've been in since January. And there's no real momentum either. We really just spent a few days in this area. Actually, all of this is non-momentous. So within that, there are trending moves that, from a 1 hour point of view, it looks trendy, and you trade it like a trend. But we are in the big picture really have gone nowhere. So as you can already see, I've marked it as a range and looking to trade it as a range because unless something changes, again, we don't have a strong trend on the larger time frames. But if you look at the recent high volume points, this is Friday's news. We have strength here, which was at an earlier support. Yeah, it was. And weakness off of this area. So typically, and they're both very high volume. Of course, news, but it is what it is. There was selling into the news, more buying into the news move. And here, a lot more selling. This is weakness. This is strength, just by definition. So when you have them this close together, right, it's not like we had weakness and we had a bunch of, a few waves down and actually trended off of all that weakness. Again, it was all this demand came in like very close together price-wise. That's more typically going to create a range, or at least treating it like a range for now, which obviously price-wise is a range, obviously. But volume is saying to us that it's a range because it's not accumulation or distribution. It's not out of balance, showing more of one than the other as far as buyers and sellers. So then it's truly a range. Range is a range is a range, right? Right. So the one way to trade it, buy low, sell high. Now, of course, if it changes, volume will tell us something else. But right now, these are the setups to look for. And it is that simple. It could go as low as a fake break, right? Which very often happens in these range trades. It's a fake breakout, And I really wouldn't need a 1 hour sign of strength to confirm. So in the zone down to a fake breakout, 5 minute setup would be fine. And here, 5 minute setup short, targeting the middle and the other side of the range. So range is a range. But that's just the euro dollar. As we go through, we'll see different stuff. Range is a range is a range. So pound dollar. And by the way, middle of the range. Most of you know this. We have a couple new people in here, or people that are returning that I haven't seen in a while. Just seeing who's in here. I don't know why, like somebody is here. Matt and Chaz, sorry, I probably mispronounced your name. I see you here 3 times, and I'm not able to mute you for some reason. I don't know what's going on with that. Now I see you here 2 times. Are you sharing the ID with somebody? How many of there are you? How many of you are there? Wow, it's 4 a.m. Pound. So quite a difference here, because if you look at the news situation, right, and you look at price was, so with the euro dollar, there was weakness here at this time, and there was strength here. Now look at it here. Yes, there's weakness, and yes, this is strength. But this is the price area where the weakness was. And let's see what happened in that price area where there was supposedly supply weakness. Less volume, less volume, less volume. And it finally makes it through, and sellers are gone, right? And we have in the background, I'm calling the strength off of news. Now, typically strength will appear lower, but that's where price was when news came out. Of course, a very high volume, but it did drop down. It was a red candle, big red candle at one point. It got bought up, and here's the result, and here's the result. And volume decreased, as it does as news is passing by, but higher prices got accepted. That's the result of all the activity. So there was a lot of selling and buying, but more buying, a lot more buying. And that's the result of all that. So that is bullish. And again, if this was the area of weakness, we had lower volume the second time when we're coming off of news, but still. And then here we really see, this could have been, again, weakness in this area, but we just got right through it with no problem and really accepted all these higher prices. So we're back to out of balance, where we have strength in the background and no issue with weakness, no issue with supply coming in. Very much accepted the higher prices, higher prices. So I marked up. I better get in there because it may be setting up right now. It is actually. So I marked up retracement areas. Wow. Okay, I have to look at getting into this trade right now. Sorry, hold on. It's pushing through the automatic rally. The volume is decreased on that. I mean, at least it's not very high. This was the initial test. This is the London Open spike. Sorry, I'm in high speed mode here because I may be getting in this. Any questions you have, I'll answer after the analysis. But 1 second, let me see this. I'm using my phone to get in and out of trades when I'm in the webinar. Okay, so just to give the analysis here. So I just show that it's more strength in the background and the weakness is not there. We're out of balance. We're bullish. And we are technically trending upward the last couple of days too, but volume agrees with that. Now here's a fib retracement from this low to high. This is what I marked earlier in the video I sent out. Right. So this would be a very textbook situation. There was no other main level to look at besides this fib. It's also a previous resistance turn support, but it doesn't even matter. It's the clean fib retracement there to see if buyers show up. Now we have a double bottom with strength right off 50 fib. And this is actually a fake break pattern. This one didn't quite touch fib, and this one went a little below 50 fib. So there's a fake breakout. Here's the initial automatic rally. Right, first level of resistance. No weakness on there. Now, I don't like getting trades, just kind of rushed into it because I know that there's high volume and things working themselves out the first, 10, 15 minutes. at London Open. This is London Open here, so you get that really high volume. Now, normally in the setup, we wouldn't want high volume here, but this time of day, right, you always get a volume spike, and you got to let it settle down after a couple candles. So that is not correct volume-wise, but that's really just a characteristic of the time. Otherwise, the setup is forming here, and it's a very classic pattern, as most of you know. Again, if there's any questions, I will happily answer as soon as I get a chance. But the main thing here to see is, because we really couldn't do like a low volume test because of the time of day here, plus once the automatic rally is set up and we're this close to it, I want to see it properly push through the automatic rally for the entry, which it did here, but I'm not rushing into it, and as long as it's pulling back, I don't have to do anything. But a lot of times, as a lot of you know, the pattern, you push through, then you get no supply testing here. Ideally, no supply before you continue. So if we end up with a no supply situation and move right above that, then I'd look to enter. Now, as far as stop loss, and let me just figure these things out. You never know when a setup's going to come, you know. For the newer people, sometimes we're just running through analysis and waiting, and it doesn't happen. But, all right, give me a second here. Stop loss, if I can get below 618. No, it's not too big. Keep my risk in check. I'm not going to go full risk. Let me just see. All right, so I'm putting a position on this now. On the pound dollar, it's about a half risk because there may be some other opportunities, and it's a little early. But just to tell you what I'm doing. And you know what? I can take it here on the demo too, just to show that. Okay. So like I said, like I often do on the stop loss, I could give it room here to do another sort of test of 50 fib, but I really just rather get it totally right. Give it that space to do the 618 overshoot that it can do. So because I took a smaller position, I'm not over risking by putting my stop there. This just kind of like popped up and I had to do it. So not a lot of time to talk about and prepare, but I'm thinking I'll go with 6.5, 6.4 is really plenty of room on the stop loss there. But like I said, a small risk. If there's another trade, I can take it, and I'm able to give it that room if it wants to go to 618. I'm more comfortable that way because it's really once it breaks that 65 level that the setup's canceled. It could chop around for a while and it'd still be perfectly valid. So I just want to make sure my stop is out of the way of all that. Okay. So it doesn't have to go up in a straight line, but it's a nice clean pattern that matches the background. Again, and it could go down to 618 and do all this business here. But if buyers are this active here, that's obviously a valid pattern setup. But they're very likely to continue to accumulate here. And the fact that there's two bottoms shows that it is a consistent activity. This is 20 minutes before London Open. 20, 30, 25 minutes where you have this very high volume buying off of that fake break pattern. And when you push through, a lot of times you'll sit here for the test and then continue up. But again, if we do go lower, they'll very likely accumulate. Stop loss is out of the way. Again, this was a planned trade that I had, marked up in the video that I sent out earlier. So I was all sort of mentally already knowing what to look for, and it just was quick here. But if there's any questions on that and why that is an entry, I'll answer that. But again, strength off of the news, and really, as you got higher, it really showed lack of selling. It's very likely to visit these prices again today, and move up until it does hit supply, which could be up at a resistance higher up or whatever. Okay, so I'll let that sit. It's about a half risk. If there's another setup, I can take it. All right, good. Let's continue the analysis. I also, I flipped through before and I saw that GU was the one that was already at the area I had marked. If you look at some of these others, they've either passed it or they didn't get there yet. So that one. This was a smaller fib, but as I said, like in the video I sent out, this is what I'd rather have seen. If it's set up here, maybe, but this is really the proper, good, high probability spot. So luckily that just popped up. As soon as I open my charts, I'm here. Okay. Continue the analysis. So AU is pulling back, but it is very bullish too. I'm surprised it even got this low. If you look at AJ, that I'm not surprised about. I was hoping that it was going to get to this area to give me another entry, but it just went off. So the Australian dollar is very strong, but for the moment, this guy was weaker than the US dollar. So if we go to higher time frames again, just to show. Did I do that with GU? GU, if I skip that, there's no momentum or overall trend, which matters. I'm not buying in a downtrend or something. Okay, so AU, daily chart. So we don't really have a trend here. Again, going back to sort of January, the beginning of February, this price range. But we do have a bit of momentum to the upside. We are making progress there. And the 1 hour lines up with that, with volume. And you see no high volume really into these price areas. But the 1 hour, again, here's the news. Friday. And high volume leading to higher prices. It's the same explanation, right? Effort result, whatever you want to call it. So again, it's not a place where typically strength is going to show up, but that's where price was when news came in. And it did move down a bit and got bought into. Again, as you go higher and higher, there's less and less activity, and it keeps going up. If you look at this area in particular, it really shows lack of selling, very extreme, because look at the low volume activity with a nice clean move that went for hours and hours into new high prices. It's not a bad move. But why such low volume? Because lack of selling. So luckily we're actually pulling back and we might get a sign of strength at a decent level. That makes sense. This was a level I had marked up for a fib retracement. We already moved below it. Well, I'll leave that there. But we also have a support. I didn't expect it to get this low. We have a support resistance level here. So if we're breaking 618, ideally we are going to get down to that. And see the setup there. 50 EMA, support. Could be a fake breakout. Same old routine, right? Because it broke fib, and typically that points to going all the way. And if we look at the 5 minute, let's take a look at that. Was there buying below the fib? There is. So it may not get there. If it gets back above this level, then maybe it'll start to convince me that I wouldn't wait for it to go lower. Is that good? Yeah. So ideally it does go to here, and that's a really good low price to get it. Maybe it's asking too much because it is very bullish. But I don't like the idea of buying below 618. Now, the 618 overshoots should look like this, which is it got bought into and it's going right back up, right? It's not hanging out down there. So if it does do a no supply situation and confirm, it's confirmed because there's the strength. But I'll give it a second and maybe some selling will show up here and bring it to an even better entry. So we'll keep an eye on that. Cool. Yeah, no, questions are good. I just want to get through the analysis and when we do question time, which is, I like to do because then I guess we're talking about the things that you guys want to know. So we'll definitely get to it. So this we had marked up as bullish as well, hoping it would come back down, but off it goes. Now looking at the higher prices, when it's new high ground on a trend, right? That's the best information you can get about the health of a trend. And we're seeing nothing special. It didn't get some high volume rejection. Let's see the 5-minute. New high ground on the trend comes in here. Here's some maybe weakness, but it really didn't stop the price. Here's the high price. And then, of course, we do have some volume, but it's really not where weakness, profit-taking, high prices would show that it's real weakness. Then we get to the market open volume spike, so it is what it is. But we're still very bullish on this, obviously. It would be a breakout trade to chase, which I don't do. So it could end up failing and creating a fake breakout, just not with weakness. Wishful thinking, but it may happen. So different scenarios. If we do come down off of that, it's not because there's large selling. So it's maybe because buyers want a lower price and there's some sellers around to give it to them. But we could hold out for that. Some lower levels. It doesn't have to be that, actually. Just because I don't chase breakouts. I've been breakout free for years. It's like breakout anonymous. Hi, my name is Peter. I used to trade breakouts. Hi, Peter. Today I'm celebrating 4 years of no breakout trades. Okay, so my name is Peter. I'm an ex-breakout trader. I'm a recovering breakout trader. So those are some levels to look at. It's very bullish, just not going to chase it. You could even do like a little higher and do a break test of here, maybe pull up the 14 EMA. It's got to get a little better though. It's a little high up there. So the best thing on the pound while it's going, I can still give analysis, is if we can see low volume in this area, right? And here finally it dropped off. And again, we're coming off the market open, so it's hard to get low volume the first 15 minutes in or so, whatever it is. So it's got to chill out. So this is a very good sign here. Again, the game that's played here is the buyers are accumulating low, and the higher prices, they let the sellers bring it down. So they'll pause their activity, but if the sellers don't show up, you get a no supply, no selling. And that's a cue to the buyers that you're probably not going to get the lower prices, and you can mark it up. So typically after a push through the automatic rally here, it does pause and test. And low volume in this area, I consider no supply, whether it's an up candle, down candle, a doji, or some fourth kind, which doesn't exist. And this guy, it's testing off the 14, and if it gives no supply here, it is valid. But we'll see. All right, and that's AJ. So looking at EJ, again, it's like the euro dollar. That's what's going on with that. Prices clearly ranging. From a daily point of view, as many days going sideways. I'm not even worried about this being a downtrend or anything because we spent a lot of time going sideways, and we had the non-farm news in there, and downtrend is a distant memory. This is what we're looking at from day to day. So there was plenty of selling off of this zone. Now, there was buying on the news. So if it gets through, no, can't chase a breakout. So the only trade I can take if it moves up is if we get weakness here. It'd be nice to see something on the 1 hour show up. Ideally a fake breakout, but a weakness in this area. Or if it moves lower, which we're nowhere near right now, buying off this zone. Now, if it breaks out properly without weakness and it's a real breakout, then of course it's trending upward and it didn't hit supply and it's a real breakout and it's bullish and I'd look for entries from there. But of course, buying here is buying right into resistance or chasing a breakout. So the only thing I could do is if this high volume weakness is short. Otherwise, I'll let it break out, right? And then take it from there. Yeah, you are really spamming. That's fine though. We'll get to it. Um, Kendall's, what's your money worth there? Pound yen. So what we had marked earlier was looking to buy because it's bullish, similar to the pound dollar. So you had the news bring it up, but then as we're entering this area, we are not seeing weakness. And at this point, again, it's like chasing a breakout. So I was hoping for some sort of pullback in strength, but at least the pound dollar did get me in. We're sitting here on low volume, hopefully, and then take it off. So, and again, from a daily point of view, on the pound yen, we do have some momentum to the upside. It's not an uptrend, right? Whatever, but there is that. So, if it's moving up and it's not hitting weakness, we're generally trending up here. And it's a simple uptrend, but I don't want to chase the breakout. So it could be a break test. It could fail the breakout, but just not with weakness, and then give an entry, right? So it's that same situation of not wanting to trade the breakout. So again, just to kind of draw it so we know. If it does break out properly and these higher prices get accepted and there's no weakness coming in or high volume, it could do a break test, right? Whatever it is, it's looking for a pullback and favorite tracement is break test, moving averages, and regular long entry once supply is not shown here, right? Which would make perfect sense. Again, if it does come down instead, and not because of high volume weakness, but it does come down, then you have your regular long entries. So that should make perfect sense. See, good, good, good. We want to sit here on low volume, which tells the buyers that the sellers are dried up, and then they start marking it up. If we do get a bit of selling and a bit of weakness on an attempt to move up, it's likely going to wait and let it pull back. It doesn't mean that everything's changed, but it's really ideal for the buyers to have the less sellers possible when they're marking up. If there's any sellers, if there's enough selling to give them lower prices to buy into, they'll typically let it come down. It could sometimes even be at a little fib retracement. Like if you draw a fib from this low to high, and you'll see buy activity on that area. So we'll follow it. Okay, so we got through the main pairs. So you see really much less correlation than we've been normally seeing. And it'll come back again, but that's just the situation it's in right now and off the end of last week. Those high volume points in the news last week, it did cause a break in the correlation, and money got moved around in a more particular way rather than just, the US dollar driving the dollar pairs, the yen driving the yen pairs. And it looks like the Australian dollar and the pound have seen more buying than the euro. Okay. Let me see your questions. I'll look at the other Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum in a minute. Okay, let me go back. Okay, I'll answer your question about EU first. Question is, so in EU there's a fib from recent low to recent high. I'm not sure what time frame you mean by that. And the highest volume of the day, pin off the 50. If it pull, maybe you're talking about something larger here. I'm not sure. 1 hour is not big. Well, right now I wouldn't be drawing a fib anywhere really in here because we're going sideways. I mean, you could, yeah, I get what you're saying about strength off the low. But the thing is, I'm only looking to buy here or sell here unless something changes. Because this activity to the left is not a consensus in one direction. There's a lot of volume selling here, and it didn't quite mark down or do its usual thing. This, when you have just this, and then the next day that goes on into lower prices, it's telling me there's sort of a mismatch in the background, and this is a recipe for a range. So I rather stick to range trades unless something else is going to change. You know what I mean? But you could draw like a fib here. I mean, based on price, if that's what you're talking about. Let me just see what you wrote there. Right. You see, I don't see any strength here. Let me go back. If it was trendy, if it was bullish bias and not so mixed to the left in close price areas, then I would understand that. Yeah, I could see doing that. And it reacted well. And it's not random. It's the fib area, and there wasn't a lot of weakness, and then the buyers are showing up, and it's making sense there. But that's how I'm dealing with it because of the. So you get my reasoning. I wouldn't really say that's wrong, but when I see weakness, high volume, strength, high volume, one day to the next, and it didn't get a chance to do multiple waves and really trend. You'll typically, if you mark those levels, go into a range between them. Now, that's a big range where a buy here would be perfectly fine. But it's just more of a ranging condition, and that's what I'd stick to as far, yeah. It's not wrong. I wouldn't say taking that trade is wrong. It's kind of like, I like to keep my standards high. I've seen this before, and, what I'm saying about this background mixed, and if I had no other options, there was not much else going on, I would consider that maybe a limited risk. So, I'm not calling it wrong. I just want to be like, have my high standards, and I really like the GU. Okay. But yeah, totally understandable if you take the trade and it's good enough for you. It's definitely, I wouldn't say it's wrong. You got your strength in the background, a fib retracement, a perfect reaction to that. Yeah. Let's see what else. About the AU daily chart. No trend. Well, there's a bit of momentum to the upside. That's about it. But overall trend, we've been in this price area for many weeks. So there's a difference between trend and momentum, if you know what I mean by that. A trend is really considering everything here. Momentum is, the last few days, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. Is there a real direction that it's going? Just to see your whole question. For daily, you said there you didn't see a trend, but when we look back starting 18th of January, see, 18th of January already is like, if we were trading longer term or something. We see lower lows, lower highs. So by the trend, do you mean, yeah, okay. So there's a difference between trend and momentum. So first of all, this trend to me is non-existent because of this. If we have to go back to January to make the case for a day trade, you know what I mean? That's a range to me. That's a whole lot of nothing for what, 4 weeks? So it's definitely not a trend to me. So there's trend and then there's momentum. So in this case, there's no trend and there's some momentum to the upside. So that matters when you start going to your 1 hour volumes and you're looking for your direction. This would give me a bullish bias. And you want to know where you are. If there's a clear trend and momentum in the same direction, you want to stick with that direction unless volume says otherwise. So that's why you start with this to get your bearings and what you're even looking to do. But to me, from a day trading point of view, this is not a trend, and there is some momentum to the upside. Yeah, and it's really just momentum, meaning are we actually trying? I mean, you could do it on a 1 hour chart if you want. So you'd say here, there's momentum to the upside, and on a smaller fractal level, it's an uptrend. But in the overview, to me, it's not an uptrend. So that's the difference, right? This is an uptrend, but from a daily chart, it's certainly not an uptrend. But there is some momentum to the upside. So you get what I mean by that? Hopefully that should all make sense. But that's the best way I found to categorize it. The overall trend, daily chart, and then a momentum, which is really, you could even just look at the 1 hour chart again and see here it's to the upside. Or you could say it's a trend on a smaller fractal level. Okay. Because those things had to be separated, which you should understand now from that explanation, between the overall trend and then the recent direction. You can have a clear downtrend on a daily chart, but have an upward momentum for the time being that never showed any strength. So you'd be looking for weakness to get back into that trend, right? So it's all, you got to know your context. Okay. All right. So G, you decided to pull back, but I don't see a lot of weakness. And again, there's a reason why the stop loss is below and allowing for it to go to a 618 overshoot. I limited my risk, so I could put my stop there. It's still not even, it's half risk approximately. So it's likely if it wants to go there, it's going to hit some buyers. If it doesn't, the whole thing is over at about 6.5. And everyone who bought through here is going to dump it and all that. But if we mark a fib here, we can get a read on how excited the buyers are just even by this little fib. And if we go to the 1 minute chart, we may see them. There it is. Highest volume in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 candles just came in here, and it could confirm as strength. So this is a good sign that the buyers, they hang out low and they wait. If there's any sellers to give them lower prices, they do it. But if they start buying at a fib and not waiting for the low, that's also a good sign. Or they may show up in here and buy, then have it go lower, and they'll show up there and buy, right? That's just the way it operates, buying into the down moves at obvious levels. So that's a positive development right there. It's all about price areas, not time frames anyway. So 1 minute is just a little more detail on that. Man, you can type. The other two questions I had, if you have time to get to them, yeah, no problem at all. You're making me work today. It's 4:40 in the morning. That's all good. I'm just messing around. Questions are good. Questions are good. On the AU, if it went below the fib, let's see. Right, that little fib I drew. Okay. Let me see what's going on in there for a second here. Okay, still at the test area, low volume testing. Again, this is really a confirmation since it got quickly above 618. It's a fake breakout. Strength is there. It is market open volume spike, which I hate to see when I'm supposed to be seeing strength, but this is a really good low volume test. There wasn't even enough selling here to create an automatic rally. And I know how strong the Australian dollar is. So I may actually be putting a position on this too. Let's see if this closes a bit higher in a couple of minutes. It went below the fib, but there was buying off the support from March 12. Was that a previous support? Would this not be considered other support to buy off of? Oh, typically, if it breaks a 618 of a really obvious fib, I'll wait for the support, which to me is that. Maybe you're talking about that. To me, it's not really a support, I guess, sort of. But to keep it simple, on this move, we have the fib retracement here. And if it goes lower beyond that and really shows that the 618 is not holding and it's not just an overshoot with strength, which it is, then I'd be waiting for this level, definitely. And ideally a fake break. I either want the fib or the fake break. I don't want to pick any random sort of stuff in there because this is the point of, is this a retracement or a reversal? And when it says reversal, I'm looking for this level to buy. Does that answer your question? Okay. Now, AJ. And AJ said supply isn't showing up to drive prices down. Right. It would be lack of buying. Would we see lack of buying? No, well, the buying, there's such little selling that the buying that's taking place is making a lot of progress in price. So it doesn't take a lot of activity for price to move up because it's really void of much selling. Would we see that through just low volume and retracement on low volume? No. I think I answered your question, right? So in this case, the entry is still, because I don't want to chase the breakout, still looking for the pullback, right? But you mentioned that if it were to retrace to the fib, it would be because lack of buying, not because, oh, right. Meaning that if it's moving down, the average person might look at it and say, oh, selling activity is going on, and it's moving down because sellers. It's, again, it could move down on some very low activity because buyers are looking for lower prices. Then you'd see the sign of strength show up. Not because selling is, running the show. You know what I mean? What would that look like? Low volume. I think that's what you mentioned. Yeah. And typically you'll get some weakness to kick that off. Nothing huge. But if buyers are, looking for good prices and they don't want to fight against sellers, you see maybe a bit of weakness and it starts to come down on low volume. And then you'll hit a spot where buyers start getting in, and that'll create a sign of strength with a fib or wherever. But you're specifically asking about the way I worded it was, it's going to move down not because, what was it? Let me go back to you. Supply isn't showing up to drive 20%. Yeah. So the buyers would be very patient. So it's not moving down in such a way that's going to make you say, oh, selling is active, right? It really, the buyers that know what they're doing are not going to be chasing this thing, and they're looking for lower prices. So they really hold off on their activity. And this is like, most of it's not humans doing it at this point. So they're waiting for, as the lower prices come in, they buy, and then they completely stop at this point. So if it starts to come down, it's not because the buyers aren't there and they're not interested and there's more selling and it's maybe reversing or something. It's all about the buyers will be waiting for lower levels. And like I said, it would likely have some weakness before it starts to pull back and move down on low volume. And then, bam, you get a sign of strength, at one of these areas without too much weakness at the high, just a bit, if any. Sometimes it'll just be nice to you and give a retracement without weakness. And So smart buyers are not looking to, force it. And if they can get lower prices, they'll wait for it. So they're still in control, even though it's moving down. It's still a bullish environment. All right. So hopefully that answers that. Oh, I was muted. Okay, good. The GU did actually hit those buyers. What happened to my box? I deleted it. Ah, there they are. Hello. Thank you, buyers. So I have some options there with some of the other pairs. Also, if the pound is not showing any issue with weakness and it does go lower, I can add to this position because, as I said, I didn't go full risk or even close to it. So um, if it wants to move lower, let's say, you have this level, you do a fake breakout, or you hit 618 and you get strength and an entry there. If I don't have any other trades brewing or get into any other trades, I can always add to this too. So I'm good where I am at the moment. All right, let's bring up the cryptos. And I saw you had a question about that. I think to answer your question, which is you're seeing bullish signs, but it keeps going down. And that's not typical. But it does say exactly the same thing, which is, let me bring up the chart, which is, yes, there are buyers into down moves. Now, it is still a fairly new market, and we don't have a lot of history to go off of. We don't have a regular sort of, it didn't even find its proper value until January, where it was finally like sort of settling down, proving itself to not be a bubble. But here we go. I think a lot of it has to do with the way people are trading it. Buying low, and holding, buying low, and holding. This is what people are doing. And every market has its own personality and storyline behind it. This is a new thing. And I think as real world news, even if it's fake news, increases the value or perceived value or actual real demand starts coming in, or XYZ is going on, which is going to create more demand, and they speculate that it's going to create more demand, all that stuff, then it starts marking up. So the nature of this market is different, where you do have down moves with buying into it, which is all over this chart. Everybody here should just see it clear as day, that all these lower prices get stopped on high volume. And the only way that could only be buyers, because if all that activity was more selling coming in, it should actually go down instead of stop moving down, right? Pretty logical. So, obviously through here, there's a lot of accumulation, buying and holding through here. If we look at the higher prices, there's not a lot of selling, there's not a lot of profit taking. So people are taking the approach where they're just buying low, buying low, buying low. And every time there seems to be some development where demand is coming in, or demand is expected to come in, then you actually start moving up. So that's the nature of this particular market at the moment. And I'm going with that flow, which I stopped day trading. I took one last week, which I ended up just holding. So I'm not day trading it because of the fact that it's doing that, which is like I explained. So if these signs of strength, it's more of if you take a long-term approach, that's really what the market is doing. These buyers are not expecting that off of this point it's got to move up, or off of this point it's got to move up. That would have been a nice double bottom fake break, but the markup just did not occur, and it didn't get through the 14 EMA. So the markup style activity is not there from large money. It's all buying into down moves and taking a longer term approach, buy and hold, which a lot of people are doing. That's the consensus. And I think it's just going to take some real world stuff to make it start marking up. But one thing that it does tell us is it's not a bubble. and certainly people are finding value in it. To see all this activity around from 10 to 8, I mean, it's not that low. There's a lot of buying through there. So it's a longer term approach. I'm sticking to that. And this is a 50 fib here. Let me back out. Wait, well, give me 1 second. I've been trying to learn why coffee is related to stocks instead of forex. I think it may be closely related to how this market behaves. So the thing is with stocks, and then like everything has its own characteristics, of course. Foreign exchange and like the strength stuff that I just showed on the Bitcoin chart. Like, do you ever really see that on a forex chart? Typically, that much strength is going to stop it. It might happen once a year that it just sees that much strength and keeps going. So to just blindly apply a universal approach to all the different markets doesn't really make sense. So if you're trading stocks, you got to worry about what's going on with the company itself and then other things that, if you're looking at Bitcoin and these things, then obviously there's a longer term trading approach from the big money and buying into down moves and not marking it up and likely waiting for actual real world reasons, again, like stocks, to mark it up. In Forex, when you're not dealing with news, there's nothing in particular going on, you'll get some nice behavior where you can day trade it more realistically, just because it's traded for profit a lot from a day in, day out perspective. But if you notice that on that Bitcoin chart, those buyers are not trying to mark it up. It's not that they're there. It's not that they can't. They're just waiting. They're just positioning, buying and holding, buying and holding. Everybody kind of figure this is out eventually, that this is the approach. And it's really the consensus right now is to do that. So if you talk to a multi-millionaire or billionaire and ask them what they're doing with Bitcoin, there's a 99% chance they're saying, I'm just buying the down moves and holding. That's what the chart is saying they're doing. So every market has its own story, and you can't just do one size fits all, But in the end, it's all the same principles. It's the same language off of the chart. Checking in on GU. Again, if we get through this area and visit this area and slightly higher prices on lower volume, the lower the better, then it's good for the trade. Again, the lower prices, we want to see volume increase at levels like this, like we saw. 1 minute really shows it. Into here, we'd like to see a volume spike if it got there. But as you move higher prices tell you about sellers. And ideally, the lower the better. And if we kind of float through this area on low volume, that's the best thing you could see. Doesn't have to do it now. I could sit here on low volume and then do it. But if we get above this price area on low volume, the lower the better. You may have a slight increase, but generally low. Does that help, Kendall? And the difference between tick volume and real volume is very minimal. It does a lot. Okay, good. Yeah, it's very minimal, the difference. So I'm really not concerned about that. I like tick volume. I like real volume. It's all about activity. Volume is volume. The word volume, while we're on that topic, as I say, the word volume just means amount. I haven't looked it up in the dictionary, but that's what it means. Volume means amount. So if you're talking about a volume of sound, right? Wow, it's really loud. It's high volume. It's an amount of decibels. So when we're talking about volume because decibels is the measurement. So it's just the amount of decibels. If you are talking about activity, right, then it doesn't matter if it's more orders that came in and you're seeing a real volume of activity, or you're seeing tick activity, because more activity is more activity, and it's going to create more price ticks either way. And you end up with pretty much the same thing. if you look at the futures market of the foreign exchange, I don't particularly like the way that volume looks. It's very overly dramatic. You get really high volume, really low volume. I just don't like the look of it. And it's also a smaller percentage of the market. It's not even 50% of the foreign exchange. So you're not really seeing real volume. It's limited. Well, it's real, but it's not the whole picture. So in that case, tick activity to me is the best. But in the end, it's all about activity. So either source of volume, whether it's tick or real volume, is going to still tell you that same thing. That's a question. Geez, do I get a tip? Can you take profit on this trade? Oh yeah, definitely. I always do that. Are we looking for the top of the right? Yeah. So I'll do that right now. So identify what the trade is, and we have our method of setting targets and dealing with it, which is all nothing new. So what is the trade? It's a trending move with at least from this time frame. It's a simple fib retracement of an up move, right? So the main target on this trade is back to the high, and depending on whether we see weakness or not, an extension of that. And I'm just marking the most obvious areas, but we'll get in there and see what else. But that's just the stuff we're dealing with to the left. It could be a fake breakout. So these are the main target areas, really right off the bat, very obvious. If it breaks through this second resistance, then I could lock in pips and trail it and whatever, and I would already have taken partial profit. So first thing I do is that if it's a simple trending move fib retracement back to the high, and if there's not a lot of weakness, there may be some limited weakness, if you could see in real time or not, when that's happening. I don't overreact to weakness coming in. I want to make sure that it actually stops the progress, because sometimes you move up, you see what looks like weakness coming in, and it continues. So if it really starts pulling back off weakness, then that's where I'd be taking a lot of profit. So that's sort of the main target. And again, if it gets through, you want to look to the left. You could also draw an extension, whatever. And really, I'm trailing it, so I'm not so worried about it. And again, where weakness may show up or not helps determine when to get out. But one other thing I do is, if you were looking to go short, since you know how to trade properly, if you're doing this method, you're trading right. So if you're looking to go short, that's where we got to mark up and worry about sellers. And it's areas of information if they're too close and they're not targets. This is not a main target, obviously, but it's a fib retracement of the down move. We're not looking to go short, but if we were, we would do this, right? Let's say we had a high volume weakness here, and that was the main volume in the background. Of course, we'd be looking at this area as short, but it's a fib retracement of the down move, so it's going to tell you about sellers. It just is. And so, for example, if it floats through this area without weakness coming in, very good sign. You're very likely getting there. The other extreme would be, let's talk about managing of the trade because it's not a target. The other extreme would be, we get to this area and we get the highest volume of the day, and it rejects, and we fail the markup through here, and we get weakness at a fib area. And let's say, for the sake of the example, it's highest volume of the day. You probably want to move your stop to break even, get out, close half of it, do something. Don't let it just run to the stop loss, right? So that's the importance of this level. And again, if it gets through 618 and there's really no issue, off we go. That's the best information you can find. But if it's struggling to move through here, and particularly if the volume's high, very high, the higher the worse it is, then you move your stop to break even. If I hit 618, it's really high volume, I'm moving stop to break even. Because the chart is saying the trade is nowhere near as good as it was. Do you really even want risk on this anymore? But again, it's a matter of not overreacting. If we move up here and we get some weakness, but the next candle closes up and that has less volume, it's not really stopping the progress. I don't overreact. So that's a skill you get used to doing. So that's the targets. So this is area of information, but the main targets are, as usual, with the trending move. Sometimes this fib area is 30 pips away, and it could be a first target, if we're getting it down there or something, whatever. But in this case, it's just information. Wow, we did an hour already? answering questions makes time pass fast. Feels like 20 minutes. So Kendall came, sat in front of the class, had his questions ready. That's good, though. So in the meantime, ooh, there's weakness there. Okay, we could see some real-time stuff develop. As far as any other options I was talking about, here's really, we got to no supply here. Really, really, really. So I may put a position on this. I want to see how this closes in a minute. And then that would likely be what I'm holding from this point going forward, not doing any more. This is pretty small stuff. This is a 20 pip stop here. Jeez, that's tiny. So I probably put my stop around 4.9 if I get in this 21 pips. And again, it's the same thing where we're looking for the top of the trend, the extension on the targets. Let's see if this wants to confirm. Yeah, that was not a good development there. It hit the 50 fib and tried to mark up, and it hit some weakness. With the background as good as it is, I'm not going to overreact to that, especially if we close higher in the next candle. But I could trim down my position if we really start seeing weakness. But I'm not going to overreact. The background tends to play out. That was at the top of the hour, too, which, I don't know, can act funky. But as far as the AU confirming, I mean, it kind of pretty much has, but we haven't moved above the test area really and closed above it. And there's really no rush with the stop loss is only 20 pips down here. So again, this might confirm soon, targeting on that high extension of it, which actually just points to a resistance that's back there. Anything else of interest? No. Now with EJ, again, the only way I would do anything in this price area is either high volume weakness comes in and it's a short range trade that was selling there in large amounts, or it breaks out. I let it break out and I look for long entries on typical pullbacks and break test and fibs and all that. So those are the options there. All right, I guess I'll end the session in a second. See what happens here. I'm not too worried about this. The AU. Okay, didn't quite convince us that the buyer's looking to mark it up, but it's not because of selling, right? There's no weakness coming in. They're just being patient. If it does come down, right, it could test this area again, show you strength again, double bottom fake break. It could come down to this support and give the setup there. but it could also just sit here on low volume and then confirm the entry. So if it moves up above here without weakness, that's confirmed entry. If it moves down and there's strength leading to an entry, then that's valid too. If it breaks this point, basically 50, then no trade. So that's pretty straightforward. And that's about it. Again, to one last look here. Fun session? Good. It's all the same story as far as I didn't end up flipping through the charts, but you see, again, like this is a 50 fib. This is 618. So you cannot say buyers are not all over this. They're just not marking it up. They're buying at the very obvious places to buy, and they're just holding. Okay, there's some markup to some extent, and it could mark up at any point. But again, I think you'll probably have some real world news come out that would either create demand or the expectation of demand, and it'll start moving. So that's really the story overall. So every low price, some buying comes in to some extent and stops it. You have fib retracements and everything. So it's all the normal stuff. Where's the Dow? Yeah, I figured it was going to hang out at 25 for a while until further notice. Still bullish though. Okay, that covers it. All right, guys. So I will send out the recording. Session went by fast. So again, until March 25th, this is the start time. I sent out the notice so all you guys know. It's still 10 p.m. Eastern, so that might be different for you. But London Open for me is 4 a.m. now, not 3, until March 25th. Just when you think it couldn't get worse, I'd have to start at 4 a.m. I don't know if that's better or worse. Depends when I sleep. All right, guys. See you next time.